This is Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley, a podcast that explores the feelings, emotions, and experiences of what it means to be human in this world. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references if you need support.
And before you dive in, please like, subscribe, comment, share with anyone you think might also connect with today's session. Our goal is to reach as many people as possible, and we are endlessly grateful for your continued support. So, let's get to it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. She didn't do it. We were off to a great start.
Was just trying to get through the opening.
Oh. Okay.
Well,
Take two.
okay. Yeah, take two. Good.
Do it.
I can't. I legit can't. How will you do it for me?
Hello. We are trying to be global here at Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley. If you have not been tuning in, you would not know that Ashley has an infatuation with Emily in Paris, therefore believes she can speak French. And by that, I mean she knows how to say bonjour and au revoir at the end. So then today she said she was channeling, if you've seen Pitch Perfect 3, there is a group that are from Germany, and Ashley was channeling them. So I said, you should say hello in German.
And I couldn't do
And
it.
she couldn't do
Because I
it.
feel like every time I do the intro, I just laugh.
Well, you stand correct because you did it today and you laughed. Maybe we're in a joking mood because of what we're talking about today, trying to
Maybe
take it in light for ourselves. So what is it that we're talking about today, Ashley?
So today we're gonna dabble a little bit with grief. And referencing back to season 1, we have a whole episode about grief, and I really love that episode because of at the end the offering that you read.
No, yeah.
Pixie Light Horse.
Pixie Light Horse.
And so that is just a really good episode if you're needing some comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're taking it kind of to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty symbolic that that was season 1 and there's been some time, and now we're in season 2 and we're going to talk about what do we do when the world has moved on and we still are experiencing some of those very intense, some of those very tender qualities of grief. But maybe it feels like, I think when something happens, our tendency as humans is to go and surround that person.
Yeah.
And so which can be really overwhelming, but it's like all of a sudden, all at once. And then it's kind of like it trickles away and everybody leaves. And that just because everybody leaves doesn't mean that wound leaves with them. The wound doesn't leave with the support. The wound is still very real. And it takes, I mean, Sara Cate, I don't know that we're ever, quote, healed from it. Yes, as time goes on, our relationship with it might change. But I don't know that even sitting here and saying give it time and it'll heal. I don't think that that's fair to anybody's system. I don't think it's fair to anybody's experience. And so that's what we're going to offer support today around is. So now what?
Yeah.
Now it's been a year and I still feel
5.
Right. Or 20
or 20
or whatever. And I still feel really shitty about it sometimes.
Yeah. And it's still hard. And and I still carry this kind of ache or this heaviness. I think what you said, Ashley, just around how it just never really, we don't necessarily fully heal from the loss of someone we've loved, or the loss of something that we've loved. And I think this goes beyond just the loss of a person. This could be the loss of an identity.
Yeah.
This could be a loss of a home. This could be a loss of a career. I think a lot of entrepreneurs open businesses and then it doesn't work, like
Mhm.
there can be this remembering of something that was exciting, or there was hope or possibility,
Mhm.
or it was a person where there was deep love and care. And this can even be the loss of, the parent you never had, right?
Yeah.
Like that can also linger and live in you.
Mhm.
And I have mostly I see adults, and a lot of my adult clients, I have to kind of help them explore and recognize that what they're feeling is grief. Their
Yeah.
anger that their parent couldn't be a good parent to them when they were a child. That's a part of grief, right? And like their acceptance of the fact that their parent couldn't be a good parent. That's a part of grief. So we can grieve someone that was really wonderful. We can grieve something that was really painful. And it all is a process that, to your point, might change in intensity, but it might never completely fully leave.
Mhm.
And you also might build a different relationship to it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that I've experienced some profound loss in my life in relationship. And the different relationships that I have to each one of those things is varied. And the experience of how I recognize it in my body is very different.
Mhm.
A loss that I experienced 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, I now look at with this sentimental quality of sadness, but the loss of someone I lost quite recently within a year and a half, um, that has a different quality. There's still a sting in that. There's still a pain and an ache and a heaviness in it for me. And that with time likely will change. However, right now, that's where I'm at. And when Ashley and I were kind of prepping for this, we were talking through like what it is that we wanted to talk about, and something that was coming up for me, and I love how she phrased it, when the world moves on, because this thing can still feel so tender for me in my body, and other people might not understand that.
Mhm.
And so we have to be really mindful about who we bring our tenderness to,
Mhm.
our vulnerability to,
Mhm.
our sensitivity to, right? Because people are going to move on. They're going to
Mhm.
move on with their lives, and things are going to happen, and they're not, and because they have their own lives, right? And
Mhm.
and they need to. They don't need to be in the depths with us,
Right.
except.
I think though that is something that what you just said there, Kate, of they don't need to be in the depths with us, I think is something that maybe we should talk about a little bit more,
Yeah.
because I think that I think that belief is out there a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And I ultimately think that it's because we weren't given, many of us weren't given the tools needed to, as adults, make the decision for ourselves to like figure out how to move through challenging things, or how to support ourselves through it, or how to even just be
Mm-hmm.
present with the thing that happened. We want to outsource everything. We want to make it somebody else's. We want to blame somebody else. We want to throw our stuff, and we've all done it. We've all done this. We want to throw our stuff onto somebody else and just want them to fix us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so as I think one of the really cool things, because this, we talk about the process all the time. And I think one of the really cool things about the process is when you start to really feel like, not necessarily that you're just in control all of the time, but that you're in control of deciding that you want to feel differently, and that regardless of what that takes, you're willing to show up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that it's like me saying that doesn't mean that then it's just like easy, right? Like it doesn't mean that I'm going to know exactly what I need in the moment. But there is a very big difference between me showing up for myself, recognizing that like something really big is happening, and I really need to focus on supporting myself, and that's for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who like, and she mentioned, like, you don't have to, like, you have to be selective of who gets to see these parts of you. But that the fact that I get to be an agency over myself and figure out what I need is very different than me just trying to put it on another person, because
Mm-hmm.
that's just a bypass. It's going to come back. There's not going to be the support you want. Nobody can give that to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is sometimes really hard to hear. But the magic really comes, and where we're going to feel supported and loved is if we're first showing up and saying, nope, I want to feel better. I want to figure out what I need.
Yeah.
And then what people or thing or whatever around me is going to be my support, because that's what it is. It's a support. It's not a just they're taking over your life for you,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. It's this like, it's almost a reconciliation of committing to you first, again, coming back into that real relationship with yourself to experience what your grief feels like, to give your body permission to grieve first and understand what that is before exposing it, right? Like sometimes it's, again, we talked a while back about vulnerability in the sense that like there's this like culture right now, cultural narrative of like, be vulnerable, share it all, expose yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But when we don't have a firm understanding of what that is, there's a chance that that thing that's really scared or really vulnerable can get hurt even more deeply if we share it with somebody. Like I felt very safe. Ashley knows that my aunt was very, very important to me. And I lost my aunt about a year and a half ago now. God, it might even be more. My brain's like really soft today. And her birthday is coming up. And I just had, I knew that I could just say to Ashley, you know, my aunt's birthday is coming up. And I don't even, I've been feeling kind of more sensitive and more emotional about it throughout the week, because to me, it's just a reminder that she's not here. Still at the point of my grief process, it isn't something I feel all particularly really excited to celebrate. Even though I can honor her life, it still is hard for me because she's not here.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder of that. I almost made it through. I was like,
It's
oh,
okay.
I was at the last.
It's okay.
And I knew I could just say that to Ashley, and Ashley would just know what that, I could just say, oh, it's my aunt's birthday. And I saw Ashley's face just go, oh yeah. Right. There was an understanding of what my heart was probably feeling. And that I know because Ashley has in turn shared with me her sensitivity around anniversaries and birthdays of people that have been really significant and important to her that she's lost. And we do that through relationship, right? We do that through me recognizing, man, this is still tender to me. I'm not excited to celebrate this birthday.
Yeah.
I'm not excited to celebrate life in regards to the loss of someone in mine, right? And Ashley can get that and know that. And I don't have to dull it. I don't have to change it. I don't have to pretend like it's fine and I'm okay and it is what it is, right? Like, but I'm not going to do that with everybody. I probably wouldn't even tell some of my friends that it was my aunt's birthday. And that's not because they're bad people.
Right.
And it's not because they don't
Right.
love me. It's just they're not, I don't, that really sensitive part of me just doesn't need to be out there for everybody all of the time. But I had to know first myself that it was okay for me to still be sensitive about it, even if the world has moved on, even if everybody else is out there living their lives. I have to give myself permission to still be sensitive about it, to still be sad about it, to still be in my process with it. And then to know who is safe to bring that to, and share that with, right? But like, and this is where this relationship, as we always say, it comes back to the connection you have to yourself and being able to care for and identify the parts of you that are still struggling.
Ugh. I feel like we just need a deep breath after that.
Yeah. I started crying and I look over and Ashley's crying and I'm like, we're not getting through this one. We can do it.
Oh, we can do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's so many there's just so many directions we could take this conversation, right? But let's maybe walk through, because I think, you know, what is hard, or in my experience is hard, is knowing how to start that process.
Yeah.
And maybe in terms of like, okay, I want to start this process so that I can find this information within myself, but then also maybe a little bit more about like discerning, like what do people do if they don't feel safe with the person they're living with, for example, right? Like where do they find the safe people? Because it can feel, when you're in the depths, it can be so lonely, and it's so hard, however you want to say it, to climb out of it, to see that there's even a light at the top, to see anything other than like the darkness of that depth. It is so hard. And, you know, as we sit here and talk about this, we we both have had a journey.
Yes. Yes, it has been.
And we both help people along their journeys. And so I want to like do that now, of like provide maybe some like tangible, sustainable things that they can do. And so I have a question.
She did this to me last time too.
I know. And I've had this question.
Sprung it on me.
This question popped in early on.
Okay.
So it's been a while since you said this.
Okay.
But you mentioned, and I'm bringing it back to this because we're working with the body here, right? We're working with ourselves and with our body. And so you mentioned that there's like a sentimental quality to some of the grief, and then the grief from your aunt stings a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
And I think that this is just a really good way to illustrate how you can identify some different things in your body. And so my question is, that sentimental grief, that's sentimental sadness is what you said. I think, practicing active listening here, I'm pretty sure she said sentimental sadness. And so if you like think about that in your body, give us some more. What does it feel like? And we don't have to go like fully into it, but just like a couple different.
So when I think about the loss of a loved one that happened when I was 18, that one feels, I feel it in my heart space. It's almost like this kind of softening really of my heart space, of just like, it's definitely still sadness, because sadness to me, let me back up. Sadness to me feels heavy in my body, very heavy in my body. Like everything kind of has a frown, if there was a way to describe it, right? Like everything kind of like softens and sinks a little bit when I feel sadness in my body. And I'm talking everything. I can feel my stomach soften and sink. I can feel my hips and my pelvis soften and sink. I can feel my shoulders kind of round and arch over my heart.
And for those of you who are listening and can't see us, when she said that, her whole body just kind of like caved forward,
curved into it.
Like she just kind of like, almost like she's going to roll up into a ball.
Yeah. Which, right? Like a lot of us feel that sometimes. Like we make statements like, oh, I just wanted to curl up in the fetal position and cry, right? Because it's what it is biologically. It's a way that we protect our really delicate organs, is curling into kind of that very primal state of existence, how we were born even, right? We start out in this like curled form. And so there's something very protective in that. So if you ever find that even your own body does that on its own, it might be telling you like, we need to feel safe right now. We need some protection right now. We need to feel cared for right now. And so for me, sadness does that. It very much rounds me out. And it's when I think about a loss from a long time ago, it's just this like this sinking and this softening in my heart of like, oh man, I'm really sad about that. And sometimes it can even bring tears, right? Like I can even get a little bit misty and a little bit like, oh, I don't want that to be, I don't want it to have been that long that I haven't heard their voice, or that long that I haven't heard their laugh or had a conversation. Right. And so that's what that one feels like to me. The one that my aunt, the more recent loss that I have had, that one comes with a gut punch. Like sometimes it literally is like the wind kind of comes out of like, I can't even get it to my diaphragm. It's just like, oof, the air kind of like moves out of my body really quickly, because it's almost surprising sometimes that she's not here. My aunt was still, to me, I considered her to be very young. She was only in her late 60s. And so that one to me is like, ooh, takes the wind out of me, right? Because it's almost like it's not real. And then it all of a sudden becomes real in a moment. Like I still have her texts in my phone, and I still have her voicemails that she has left me in my phone. And so there is some degree of, I'm not in acceptance yet. And so when it becomes real in a moment, it does surprise me almost that she's not here. And that one, and then it's the oof, the surprise, and then the sting. That like really, it's kind of a sharp movement from my stomach up to my chest, and it almost every time brings tears, right? Because it's really intense still. It's really fast still in my body. This like, oh, this is heartbreaking to me. This is painful to me. So they feel very different in my body. And I can imagine, so if I were to take that, what I just expressed and put it out as a prompt, even right now in me describing those things, where did you find some resonance? Have you forgotten that someone wasn't in your life and it surprises you in a moment, right? Think about what that sensation is of surprise in your body. When you think of someone that you loved that's transitioned, or maybe it was even somewhere you lived that you loved, but you had to move on, but there's still a sweetness about it. Where do you feel that? Is it kind of a smile in your face? Is it maybe a little settling in your shoulders, right? Because not all loss has to be really intense. And so being able to kind of build awarenesses, and sometimes the question is as simple as, where do I notice that in my body right now? When it comes in and you're like, I just thought about that person or that thing that I haven't thought about in years. What am I noticing right now and where?
I think that's like, we talk every time about what are you noticing? And I think sometimes clients will be like, so where do I start?
Yeah.
And it seems sometimes, if I were to then say like, well, no, what do you notice what you feel in your body? They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what? That's where I got to start. But yeah, yes, that is where we start. And because I think that the biggest thing that maybe can help you understand why, or hopefully gives you a little bit more insight into that, is because you are the owner of your body. You are the person who gets to move through this life for yourself, right? I can't do that for you. Sara Cate can't do that for you. And you fully deserve to be in ownership of yourself and to know yourself. And I just think that unfortunately, like most of the information we get, most of the messages we get teach us how to move further away from ourselves. And so when we say something like, just notice what you feel like in your body, if we had been given that prompt our whole life, this wouldn't feel so like strange.
Confusing.
Yeah. Or like, but that's what it is. It's because we've got to get to know our body. We've got to get to know what's going on within us. And that, so maybe it seems a little silly, or maybe it seems like too simple, or like what, you know, just weird, right? But that's really where we start, because we have to know us. We have first.
I mean, absolutely. Because if we can't connect to what we feel individually, there's no way we can appropriately articulate what we need from somebody else. Like I said, when Ashley shared with me, it was a while back, and she shared with me what she was like feeling. She just had to say, oh, this is coming up. This date's coming up, right? And we sat and I was like, let's pull cards, right? Like it was kind of, sorry. It was kind of like this, like I knew exactly in that moment how to support my friend, right? Because she knew, and in other times had expressed and been able to tell me what she would need by things she would ask for, or just by receiving care to some degree, of me being able to be like, oh, is that me being able to say, is that still really hard? Or is that still really tender? Right. And then she knew it was safe when I ask a question like that to be like, yeah, it is, rather than being like, oh, that's good. That's great. You know, oh, let's celebrate her. Right. Like, let's just make it simple and fair, because again, some people, if we have not been able to feel these things in our body, it's hard for us to recognize it or experience it for somebody else. Right. Like if you have never been given permission to feel sensitive or soft or sad, it's going to be hard to tolerate that in somebody else. And that doesn't make you a bad person or not a good friend.
Right.
It just means that might be something you could start to try to meet in yourself. So that way you could care for others and let others care for you when you're in that space.
I think this is also really helpful. If you are somebody who feels deeply, like if you are a sensitive person, I know I'm a sensitive person. And I know when I started to understand it within myself, it was so much easier for me to not just carry the grief from others. It was so much easier for me to discern, okay, this is mine or this is not mine. And because this is not mine, I get to show up in a way and just provide support for what they need, right? Not take this on as my own and give them what I need, because that gets really tricky, because it's not about you. If you're supporting somebody else who is grieving, it's not about you. It's not about your process. It's about them and what is going, like she said, like she knew how to support me because we've created this relationship. We've created this very
we know
close
each other.
relationship, and we know each other really well. I probably wouldn't. We were finishing each other's sentences all morning before we started this.
She would say, should we? And I'm like, do this thing. Yeah.
And then eventually I think she said, like, so basically we're just one brain. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Just split into two people. But I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
You were saying that
maybe
we know how to care when we recognize our own and somebody
else.
We know how to care for them.
Yeah. So I, like me showing up for Sara Cate, if there's some things showing up and me being like, okay, this is what I need to help with my grief, and I'm just going to put that on Sara Cate because that's
what I did.
Yeah. That's not always super helpful.
It's very mergy.
Yeah.
Right. And what Ashley's saying is like being able to see, where your grief ends and their grief begins as you start to support somebody.
Right. Yeah. And
you can say, oh, this is what do you need?
Right.
Asking the question.
Right. And I think, again, we don't have a lot of conversations in this culture about grief. We don't have a lot of conversations about how uncomfortable it is when somebody tells you
Mhm.
that something really bad just happened to them or somebody that they love, and you're the person that they chose
Mhm.
to divulge that information with. And now you're the one sitting on the other end in this role of, okay, I want to support this person, but holy fuck, I don't know how.
Mhm.
Right. And so, and we say things meaning well that are maybe not always helpful,
Yeah.
or we just like, we do things, or we try to say like, tell me what you need, tell me what you need, tell me what you need. And we kind of like demand this, like, let me help you, like, tell me what you need help with, instead of just taking a step back and being like, okay,
Mhm.
these are the feelings in my body right now.
Mhm.
And this person sitting in front of me is whoever this person is, and they deserve their process through this. So how am I showing up for that right now?
Mhm.
Instead of instead of thinking that we have to fix
Mhm.
everything, that it is our responsibility to just throw their hurt away, because that's robbing them of their like really real experience that they're having right now. And they don't deserve that. And we don't deserve that. Like,
No.
we don't deserve that pressure on ourselves to have to do that. And so, again, coming from a place of being a highly sensitive person who like didn't know how to differentiate between what was mine and what was theirs, and then not knowing what to do with all of these things that I'm feeling, or I'm able to differentiate, like, couldn't even tell you. I mean, literally, I don't know. Like, there are multiple times that I can vividly remember standing in lines at like a grocery store or in a mall or on a plane where I'm like in tears, not knowing why, because the person next to me is carrying something really heavy or bigger than them, and I'm the one taking that on. Like, so coming from this place of like, it it's imperative to our own health
Mhm.
to get to know those things and those sensations within us. And to bring it all back, it is about just noticing. I didn't want to. I wanted to just find a different way. But as soon as I stopped and asked myself these questions, like we just, like Sarah
Mhm.
Kate just said, of what do I notice in my body right now? Until I did that, it was so unregulated.
And you could just keep running.
Right.
Because
Right.
and to some degree that, that as a coping strategy works until it
Mm,
doesn't.
right.
And then, in saying all of this, what I love about kind of the way this conversation has evolved is just that it just comes back to that renegotiation of relationship to ourselves
Mhm.
and permission in ourselves to explore safely and with support what might be living there, and then being able to find like the community that you get to build of care for yourself when you have access to these parts of yourself can be even stronger and even more attuned to what it is that you need when you are, right?
Mhm.
We have to become the caregiver we didn't have first.
Mhm.
And that comes through trial and error. And that
Mhm.
comes through a hell of a lot of time. Like,
Mhm.
it isn't something that we just, as soon as we start to pay attention to our sensation, all of a sudden we know. It has to start somewhere, like Ashley said, like, what am I feeling in my body right now?
Mhm.
Where do I notice it? Right. And as we do that, that gets to evolve into, wow, I'm actually just feeling the pain of this.
Mhm.
And I just need a friend who understands, and I know who understands. So I'm just going to reach out with a text
Mhm.
and say, hey, I'm having a hard day.
Mhm.
Or,
Yeah.
hey, my aunt's birthday is coming up.
Mhm.
And if I were to send that text to Ashley, she'd be able to be like, I love you. What do you need? Do you need me? Do you need something? Do you need a laugh? That typically is what she gives me. Um,
Woo!
Little comedian over here.
I think I'm funny.
You are, because you are. And so it's
Oh.
building that, but like there is another rest of the world that has moved on that I'm not going to bring that information to,
Right.
but I'm not going to say it doesn't exist just
Mhm.
because the rest of the world moved on.
Right.
I'm not going to pretend
Right.
like I don't have these feelings in my body and that I'm sad about it. I
Mhm.
cried all the way to my polar plunge this morning, just because I was sad. I was like, God,
Mhm.
I really want to just get through that day. I want to get to March 19th because it just will feel easier if that's behind me. And I gave myself permission to be sad about it.
Mhm.
And I gave myself, and then I got in the river and that held me, and I got to be with friends and laugh, and that held me, and I knew I was going to see Ashley, and that held me. So I have all of these things now that I know I can also lean into, because then it makes that sadness a little bit more easy to navigate. However, I still gave it permission to exist.
Yeah, I think she's describing being seen
Mhm.
and witnessed in the depth of the struggle, or whatever you want to call it, of the sadness. And when we talk about being the caregiver to ourselves that we didn't get, that's one of the things for me that was always really important about that, of knowing that when I am in the depth of something,
Mhm.
knowing that to me, it's very important for me to be witnessed. And I think, I don't want to say for everybody, but I think it's one of the most important things about being human is being witnessed.
Yeah.
And, what she's describing is she has found a way to be witnessed without somebody ripping open the wound, right? There's a difference between ripping open a wound and caring for a wound. And she,
Mhm. It didn't cut out. We're pausing for emotion.
oh man,
We needed a little instrumental music. Ding, ding, ding,
right?
ding.
Okay, so we need that. It's like okay. But yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah. Just that, like, what I don't know. I think
No.
what
Yeah.
moves us about Ashley and I about this is like why we're so passionate about doing this podcast and bringing this information to support you in gaining a connection to yourself, is so that way you can be witnessed
Totally.
and you can be held and you can
Good
be
job,
cared
Sarah
for, and you can build relationships that support you and that come towards you in these moments with attuned support, meaning they know or can sense how to come towards you when you're having a hard time.
Yeah.
And you too can do that for others when you know what's in you first, right?
Yeah.
And like I can attune to Ashley because I know what those things feel like in my body. Her pain doesn't scare me. Her pain doesn't make me retreat because I don't know how to deal with it, because I've met that pain in myself. It's hard though. It's shitty sometimes
Yeah.
to meet that pain. Like,
Yeah.
even like I said, there's a part of me that would just like to zoom through the next few days.
Yeah.
Right. And I am also just having to sit and be like, and so I'm going to be surrounded by people that I love. Friends have reached out because I've committed to not quieting those parts in myself anymore. So I do tell the right people and the people that I know will support me. And it doesn't mean those days are any less shitty.
Right.
It just means that I have
Right.
padding
Right.
around me.
And this is just such an important time to have compassion for yourself. If somebody coming to you with these feelings has been really overwhelming and really hard, because again, I don't want to ever generalize, but a lot of us were not given the tools to work through any of this. We were given the tools to bypass and ignore and to push through and to just make it to the next, whatever, like do the things, follow like step 1 through 4 of like, okay, well, this happened, so we got to do this, and we got to do this, and we got to do this, and then it's over, right? And then we get to move on, and
I
that,
just avoid it, or
yeah. And so you're not a bad person if you didn't know how to deal with grief in yourself or grief from somebody else. You're not a bad person, and so much love and compassion is needed for this journey if we're referencing showing up for somebody else who's in this process, and maybe more importantly for yourself through this process.
It's hard and it's scary, and it doesn't have to be done alone.
Right.
And we always bring it back to our list of references or reaching out for support. We have a wealth of facilitators and practitioners between the two of us that we can support you in connecting with. This isn't meant to be, we are not meant to journey in any of this alone.
Mm-hmm.
And, healing is relational, meaning we need another's support to really heal.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we need someone else's support to guide us back to ourselves.
Yeah.
So if this feels like too much, bit by bit, maybe listening to a podcast about grief is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe it's buying a book about grief, right? Maybe then it's contacting a grief therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever it might be, it's a journey, it's a practice. And like I said, me doing the work that I've done hasn't made that grief less painful, but it's helped me feel supported while I was grieving.
Yeah.
Because I gave myself permission to still be in the grief. And so when the world moves on, I still honor what is coming up in me,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's hard.
And I love that about you.
I love that about you.
No.
And we lean into each other.
Yes.
Because
we
shit,
do. Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be able to do it by myself. I can tell you that. Hot
Yeah.
Mess Express.
Yes.
So as always, take care of yourselves. Reach out, connect. Please share this with someone who might be starting their journey or might be in a grief process where, it's the easiest thing to hear is like, sorry, I don't know why I'm crying about this still. If you've ever heard that
or said that,
that might be a podcast to share.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So until next
Woo.
time,
Yowza.
take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Oh, you can do it.